Hello and welcome to Postgres FM, weekly show about all things PostgreSQL. I am Michael, founder of PG Mustard. This is my co-host Nikolay, founder of Postgres AI. Hey Nikolay, what are we talking about today?
Hi Michael, your turn.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
I'll fall back into the
Right,
previous one.
right.
Yes, so you chose this topic. We're going to go deeper into self-hosting Postgres and some.
Self-hosting Postgres.
Yeah,
Right. We had an
absolutely.
episode number 2
Yeah.
more than 1 year ago, and we compared managed versus self-managed. Right. Self-managed, self-hosted. Is it the same or no?
Whoa, good question. What are we including?
There is difference. There is difference which probably right now is not visible yet, but it might become more visible over times in the future. What I mean, in the past we had the model before clouds. We had the model when, for example, Oracle was selling, or different, like Microsoft was selling databases as like kind of box, right? You have software, you need to you pay for the license, but you need to install it yourself probably, right, and so on. It's like self-hosted, self-managed, but then cloud model showed that there is a new way, so managed. You don't manage it. You have only SQL connection. You cannot even run top, and you don't
Hmm.
host, you don't manage. But what if we think you can host yourself, but allow others, I mean, the vendor, for example, manage it remotely? I think it's possible, and I think several companies already experimenting with this approach. So I would distinguish self-hosted and self-managed. But today I think we can discuss mostly the case when we have self-hosted and self-managed. So we want to install purely open solution to our servers on-premise or in cloud, and then deal with all the troubles.
Yeah, great point. I think self-managed is a better definition then, because we don't care if it's on the cloud still, do we? It's the fact we're having to manage it ourselves that's important to this. Cool.
Right, right. So where to start? And let's warn our audience that we will have two sides of discussion: technical and less technical, non-technical. And technical will be, let's discuss what kind of tasks do you need to solve and which tool probably you need to use, and challenges, technical challenges. And second is less technical, about probably where the market is moving and why we don't have this what I described, like self-hosted but managed by some other company, so you can offload this responsibility to some experts and don't grow in-house expertise. Right, and probably the second discussion we can just touch it because it's a bigger topic, and let's focus more on technical side. But definitely let's touch the second side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So should we start with the more technical, like what the kinds of things that if you're choosing to manage it yourself, the kind of things you have to think about?
Yeah, let's consider what is Postgres. Postgres is quite good. Postgres is a very bad database system, very bad database system, but the others are just worse.
Okay, I haven't heard that before.
Well, it's from England. This is Churchill saying about democracy, so I just rephrased
Sure.
it. Right. So from your country, right? So, and I see so many bad things about Postgres, so many that I can claim this and prove it. But other database systems are definitely worse. But the thing what I'm trying to say right now, Postgres is not a product. It's just one of the pieces you need. It's a core. It's like core engine of your car, right? But you
Oh,
need also
well,
wheels, you need the trunk and seats, belts, and so on.
trunk's a good word. The way I've thought, I think the core idea is really important. I think a lot of comparisons I've seen are to like the Linux kernel, but I also think of it a bit of as like a platform. You can use it on its own, but it's much better if you've added things to it. So I
You
think
can
it's
You cannot
We've
use
gone-
it on your own. You cannot use it on your own. I mean, it's nonsense. It's like you don't put data to files, right, and deal with synchronization. You want SQL somehow. You want SCID, but it's obvious you want auto failover. You want backups, backup verification, pooling, because Postgres lacks all of them, right?
It lacks the best ones of all of those are it lacks some of them, and some of them there are better tools available. I agree. So actually backups is a great place to start, because that feels like something everybody's going to want.
Exactly. So exactly, backups probably should be like number 0 always. And I had a discussion a couple of days ago with my old friend who was self-managed, but recently they moved to RDS. They don't like some things, and they also, of course, don't like price, because it doubles, roughly doubles the costs compared to also AWS, but self-hosted. They lack some things like, I don't know, like, doesn't matter. But I asked him what is number one reason why they moved on RDS, and he said constant fear of having issues with backups is number one reason. So backups, you are right, should be number one. But not only, we know unverified backup. There are two mantras. There are two mantras around backups. Dump is not backup, first mantra. And second, unverified backup is not a backup. It's a Schrödinger's backup. So you need to verify your backups. You need to test them always. And moving to RDS gives you some confidence that backups are fine. You don't see verification signals that you see backups are created. Good. You know point-in-time recovery is implemented there, and you can use it. You don't see verification tests, like results of the tests of those backups. You don't have the list of, okay, this backup is verified. But at the same time, you know that you can trust RDS backups, because otherwise people would complain, and you would see posts and tweets and LinkedIn messages like complain. People not, RDS is very popular. People are not complaining, so it feels like you can trust backups RDS has, right? But if you're self-hosted, you need to use some tool to have full-fledged physical backups with point-in-time recovery to minimize RPO, RTO. I'm not going to clarify RPO, RTO here, because we had an episode about it as well. And you need to test them. And testing is super important, that it requires effort, because, for example, for Volga, I don't know if testing capabilities exist out of the box. For PG backrest, probably they exist. And the fact that we have multiple backup solutions for Postgres means that Postgres lacks something. What does Postgres lack? Postgres is not a product, it's just an engine. It's not a product. You need to productize it yourself if you need to self-manage. And the more databases you are going to have, our last episode about sharding and also microservices approach, like if you need just a few databases, probably you can be okay and do some manual stuff. But if you are going to have hundreds of databases, you need very good automation. This is what I mean, productize. You need some scripts, buttons, API, CLIs to achieve to make Postgres to play well together with Volga or PG backrest or something else, or maybe you can live without them, but it's harder because they provide some functionality Postgres doesn't have.
I think the key thing you said was if you want point-in-time recovery, which most people do, and it's that for me feels like the main thing that's missing if people are talking about PG dumps or
do you want transactions?
Yeah. So
some people can say we can live without transactions. Okay, you can live without point-in-time recovery until you have some issue, and then you are very sad because you didn't think about in advance. Of course, everyone needs point-in-time recovery.
Well, but I think that's why I think it's worth explaining. That's why you're saying Postgres doesn't include backups, because it doesn't include a point-in-time recovery solution, and that's where the tools come.
It includes point-in-time recovery, but you can think about it like Postgres has like API for it.
But like the PG-based backup, you mean?
Yeah, it
you
has
don't have a tool.
Recovery target LSN. It has some configuration. It has some handles, but you need something that will use it,
like an interface.
Right. Of course, we know Postgres doesn't have UI, right? So I'm not talking about UI here, but of course it would be good to have UI. Like you open and see backups, you can navigate them, you can search, you can understand which backups failed probably, like you receive also, you have monitoring, you have alerts, this is needed actually. And Postgres doesn't have it itself. It has only, it exposes some API, so to speak, right? But somebody needs to, like, some additional tool needs to automate it, and this is exactly what VoltG. By the way, VoltG also doesn't have alerts and monitoring and UI and so on. And it has quite interesting CLI, which probably is not excellent. And sometimes you need to do the math yourself, taking two LSNs and understanding how much. For example, Barman would say, okay, yesterday we generated 2 terabytes of WAL. VoltG doesn't say it. You need to take 2 LSNs and go do the math. Okay, so I mean it lacks some features here, right? But at least it implements this automation for backups, and it handles all the things, so you can just work in CLI. You probably want UI for it, and you definitely want monitoring and alerts.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something right at the beginning that doesn't always get mentioned, which is, so you need to set up backups, but you also need to set up testing. So restoring and doing some checks to make sure your data is there and not corrupt and working as expected.
Yes, and I know pgback REST has something for testing. VoltG doesn't have like special command to test, but and also pgback REST has checksum verification for backups. Great. So you probably need to take care of it yourself, to have some periodical jobs. If you're in cloud, it's easier. You can start some machine and temporarily, maybe even a spot instance, of understanding that you can lose it, just for budget saving. And you can restore there and then report and get rid of it. By the way, reporting here is very interesting, because sometimes restoration takes longer. So reporting, and for example, if it fails, it won't report. So we need additional system which will report if backup is not created by some time of a day, which we know it should be already created by.
Like, have you heard the phrase "dead man switch"? That kind of thing.
Yes, and this is such service exactly this name .com, right? So you can use that as external tool, which will tell you that backup didn't come on schedule. And you can also additionally add some corruption checks there and so on. So it's not a trivial thing. And if you want product, this is exactly what RDS provides you, right? Or other managed services. But they hide testing jobs. Probably, I think they don't test each backup, of course, because it's too expensive. But they should test it occasionally, some of them, and have some coverage to understand if everything works well or not after they change some things in backup pipelines. So it's not simple topic at all, and it touches also monitoring and alerting, which is like global thing. For all things you will need it, and there is no, we know, I like to say, there is no ideal monitoring yet for Postgres. Doesn't exist, unfortunately, especially if you consider only open source. You will deal with a lot of things missing in a standard Postgres exporter for Prometheus, and then visualization sucks always. I mean, dashboards in open source tools, I don't see any very good solution, and so on.
Well, and you mentioned an important thing. Even in the open source ones, the alerting is never included, right? Like that's sometimes really important. Like, imagine what a common failure case is running out of disk space. You need an alert on that. Like you need an alert on
simple alert.
Yeah. So great point. I'm scared of time.
We already,
of how
we
many
already
things
discussed at least half of year of hard work for a couple of people if they want to be prepared to run hundreds of nodes. But like I'm afraid if we continue, someone will say, "Oh, it's so hard." Okay, convinced I'm going to buy RDS. But this is not the goal I wanted to pursue at all. So, I'm a big fan of self-hosted.
Mm-hmm. But you can start with simple versions of these, right? Set up simple testing, set up simple monitoring. Backup testing, set up simple monitoring.
Yeah.
Simplest
monitoring is probably just net data. It's like one line, and you have already something quite well covered. And its Postgres plugin is being developed quite well. I see. It's not perfect. It lacks a lot of stuff, but it's already something, and it can provide you system level like host stats monitoring and Postgres plugin. Like it's a very good thing. BPF it has as well, like something. So let's. Like if we continue, we will need like an hour to
I know,
to list all things we need. Like let's probably walk very fast. What also like I had a tweet about what is a must-have in any Postgres installation. An interesting thing: managed services. Some parts of not every managed service has everything. For example, RDS doesn't have automation for major upgrades. And this is strange, but it's so. Many lack good monitoring. They have some pieces of it, and that's it. They don't care about PGStar statements, for example, and so on. They don't show you top N graphs for PGStar statements for query analysis. Okay, let's talk about other must-have components if you want to self-managed backups. Auto failover, of course, right? We discussed it many times. Like just use Patron and that's it.
Other options are available, but that's the tried and trusted one, isn't it?
Yeah. What else?
You've mentioned major upgrades already. I think there's a couple of settings that are really important when you're first setting up. We did a whole episode on configuration, but there's a couple that require restarts it'd be quite helpful to have on from the start. Making sure you've checked your config because you're not getting that set up for you, and they're quite conservative by default, or a couple of the settings aren't very sensible by default for most setups. Checksums, you talked about enabling those, like things like that. What about extensions?
Automation? Actually, check automation is very important. I recently saw that one hosting provider, which provides managed Postgres. It's not the biggest one. Somewhere in Europe, they use Zalando operator, and we have a client who uses them, and this hosting provider somehow screwed up some migrations or upgrades. So thanks to Postgres 15 warnings about collation changes, it was detected that many indexes, bitter indexes, got corruption. And you need check. And you need to automate check with heap all indexed. Because I recently told you, I discovered check also is able to check heap. So you can check both bitter indexes and heap. This is great. And so corruption checks should be automated, and just should be a button. I want to check and see if I have some issues, right?
Yeah, in the spirit of running through a few more quickly, extensions. So like pgstat statements won't be on by default. So things like that would require a restart are worth checking if you've got them on from the start, and that will help on the monitoring front, of course. And the big one that gets brought up a lot as well is a connection pooler. If you're anticipating you're going to have it or going to need a few hundred connections.
And we are going to have connection pooler war or at least battles in the upcoming years, because several teams develop alternative solutions, and it's becoming more interesting. So yeah, connection pullers I think also should be included.
What did I miss?
Well, you missed a lot of things. For example, index automation, uh, getting rid of bloat control, some health check tooling, like to see do we have unused indexes, index maintenance. We had an episode about it. It's great to have some automation and tooling for it. And it's not, when I say it's great, it means 99% of people will need it eventually.
Yeah,
Especially
and not just self-hosted, not just self-managed.
Of course, yes.
Currently, you need this everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know any good provider which has it already.
Not yet, no.
Right. You probably need something to help your developers with, if you have developers, backend engineers, with queue pattern in database. Like for example, you could install PGQ, but it feels old and outdated. There are other solutions which you probably would like to use, and probably it's another component if it has some additional pieces you need to install, right?
Yeah, new one just came out recently, didn't it?
Right. You probably need PG Vector or PG embedding as well, extension which is super popular. Well, it's not a joke. A lot of companies right now try to adapt LLM into their technological stack. So if you're a Postgres user, why not? And PG Vector is receiving this HNSW new algorithm, new type of
indexing.
Which is better for high-dimensional vectors, and PG embedding has it from beginning. So there are many things we can talk about. Log analysis, very important, can be considered as a part of monitoring, but
yes,
not only. Yeah.
Because many things that are quite important aren't logged by default. So yeah, settings are very conservative there as well.
But what if you don't want to not only you don't want to develop everything, but you also don't want to play a Lego game? What are the options? I see two big options here. One is become the fan of Kubernetes and start using one of numerous operators. And it's great to have alternatives already. It's a Lambda operator, Crunchy operator, and Postgres, which Postgres is it feels more like product, more pieces like bundled together and so on. They don't provide a SaaS, so they don't care about SaaS right now. And actually Solanda also doesn't care about SaaS, but they develop for their internal needs, while Crunchy has Bridge. So interesting to think about how complete is solution is, and licensing also, right? So like it's an interesting area.
I think you're missing something. I think there is like quite an interesting trade-off here, because you do lose. So there's some things you get. Some of the reasons you might have wanted to self-manage in the first place, you might lose if you go down one of those routes. An example you brought up, I think, yeah, let's say you pick Stackgress, or let's say you're considering Stackgress, but you want timescale licensed features. I don't think you can have that right now. Whereas if you I think they only support the Apache 2 version.
I'm not sure. You should check.
I did check.
Okay.
But what I mean is, if you're self-managed, you can install that. Like you can use timescale yourself, like the fully licensed. So like if you want full control of the extensions you install, and you want to work, like you don't want the operator to control that, there's an interesting trade-off there.
I think you can have, if you can have it at all, you can have it in Stackgress as well.
I thought you said they controlled which extensions you can even install.
Yeah, you are right. Then this I don't like, by the way. It should be fully open, but it's hard to implement and so on. Yeah. So I agree. Like Postgres, not only like Postgres is philosophy is extensibility, openness, open source, everything. And not only you should be able to install any extension, including that extension you developed yesterday yourself. Right? Why not? This is true Postgres.
I mean, you're bringing up the philosophical question. I'm talking about in practice.
In practice, if I want PG embedding, but it's not yet available, Postgres has hundreds of extensions supported. It's great, but I think it should be changed somehow to be fully open. And I discussed it with them, but somehow we have slightly different use here. So my idea, it should be fully open, anywhere. If it's purely like Postgres style product, but also you should be able to recompile Postgres if needed. Why not? Sometimes I want to change some constant in the source code and recompile or add some like things to what I want to have. But it's a very good question. Is it possible? In Postgres probably it's not yet possible. I know they think about it. I'm not sure about other Postgres operators. Is it possible to use a different Postgres image to change it? I think it should be possible. You should change source code and start using it. This will mean it's true Postgres product.
Well, but this is kind of what I meant, that some of the reasons people might be self-managing in the first place might prevent them using one of these if there's a limitation currently. So I think it's a really interesting point that you kind of move towards no longer being self-managed at that point. If they're managing a lot of those things for you, if they've got a lot of those automation things in place, maybe you get a lot of those benefits again. But I'm just asking if there are downsides too.
Right, and I think there should be some route where I can use defaults, which are very well tested and prepared by vendor of this product, developer of this product. Probably I will be paying for support of this if I want to offload some work, right? But if I need to deviate and I have engineers who can recompile Postgres, for example, if it's very needed, right? Or switch to version which is like, I don't know, like 16 beta 3, which is out a few days ago. But they don't have it yet. It should be possible for purely open source product to switch to it. There should be some way to install an extension, recompile, switch to new version. It should be possible. In this case, it's great and it's fully open approach. But what if I don't want Kubernetes as well? I know like it's easy to get Kubernetes from cloud, but what if I want to run everything on my servers, and managing Kubernetes it's a very big task as well. So in this case,
you're not already, yeah.
In this case, I think we also have some new trends, which probably will give my idea development. So my idea again, like to have managed services, managed Postgres providers. They showed how can a good product can be built on top of Postgres. They did it, great. But they are not open, they are proprietary. For example, as I tweeted a few days ago, show me the source code defining RDS super user. We don't know how it is defined. Being able to check open source code is essential for me as a specialist or as an engineer, because sometimes I lack things in documentation. I don't want to go to provider and play the game like if a good support engineer who knows things, or no, I spend days trying to reach expertise. I would just look at source code and understand how it works. Give it to me. But they don't open it. It's proprietary software. So, and many managed service providers do the same. Some of them already use publicly available open operators for Kubernetes. Good. But in this case, at least I know where to look at. For example, the same guys where we talked about corruption, I said it's probably related to operational system switch. And I immediately had idea, like what's happening there. I immediately found a pull request in Spilo, which is used by Zalando operator. Spilo is a container image, which includes Postgres, all major versions for major upgrades and so on. And I found they recently switched to one Ubuntu to different Ubuntu, which is probably the reason of corruption, right? Yeah. And they have some flag to bring locales from old Ubuntu, some hack, interesting hack, and actually Kukushkin mentioned it in private discussions. That's why I actually knew where to look at. But interesting that this flag is disabled by default, and I guess that provider forgot to enable it. And they don't have corruption control, as I mentioned. Everyone should have it for B-trees, and they had corrupted indexes. So, and I just immediately sent this line of code to my client saying, go to your provider and just show them this line and this pull request, and that's it. This is the power of open source. You just read the code, understand what's happening under the hood. And if you use managed service provider, you don't have it. So self-managed is good. If self-managed consisting of purely open source components has this power, full transparency, what's happening inside it. If you have engineering skills, you can tweak it and fix it and contribute back actually and so on. So question is, can we have same level of convenience as RDS provides, but fully on open source components, and also without Kubernetes? I mean, Kubernetes is great. If you already have it, it makes sense to continue extend it to databases. But if you either move away from Kubernetes, I already know some teams who move away from Kubernetes, or you just don't want to avoid it, do we have anything which would provide same level of convenience? And I know three products already, maybe three, I don't know. First is Vitaly, who works with me, has PostgreSQL cluster, open source product, MIT license. It's just Ansible playbooks, which will easily install Postgres, pgbcrest or WolG, pgbouncer, monitoring like NetData or pgwatch2, and what else? Timescale is just a flag, right? And many other things. And it's just a snippet which installs on any server. Patroni, of course. Patroni, pgbouncer I mentioned, right? So it will install it to multiple nodes, and you have cluster with HA characteristics, with backups. I think it lacks backup verification. This is like, it should be solved, but it's solvable. And this already is an alternative to RDS without Kubernetes, which is a very good thing, right? So I would like to explore if this project can be improved and be used like by more people who. It's an interesting project, I think. And I don't like Ansible output because you either have very verbose, so it's very outdated. Ansible CLI feels very outdated. It's either very verbose or it provides you some steps and you don't know what's happening right now. No progress indication and so on. But I think it's also solvable. So I think this is a very interesting project for those who want self-hosted to have everything bundled, like one product, and without Kubernetes. But I think it's also not product again, because it lacks some things like this backup verification. It lacks UI, for example. It lacks some things, but it's possible. It already saves a lot of effort if you want to go self-hosted without Kubernetes.
You mentioned you knew a few products. What were the other two?
I just discovered Supabase, went to monorepo approach, and they have everything under Apache 2.0, meaning that they have control plane. They call it dashboard, right? Or I don't remember. Right. So they have some name for it. I forgot, sorry. So control plane, you have UI, you have automation, you can install it yourself and have Supabase. Supabase is also a bundle, it's a product. They also play this productized game. They play a Lego game for you, so you have all components of your car, not only engine. So it's Postgres, it's what else? Like they have pooler, definitely they have their own pooler. They have additional components which are more oriented for backend and front-end engineers. It's API using pgBcrest. Oh, sorry, Postgres. REST there and here. But in pgBcrest, REST means restore. Here it means REST API. So pgBcrest, also additional components, real time to make it feel like Firebase. So if change happens in database, you can easily propagate it to application, and authentication and so on. So you can use them your own, on your self-hosted, and this is a well-tested solution as well. At the same time, I discovered a few months ago they don't have HA, so they didn't have standbys. I think they should already solve it by now. I'm not sure. So just
on that note, would you put PG autofailover in this category of it's not Kubernetes based but gives you some of these tools out of the box? Is it just
PG autofailover is just an alternative to a Patroni, right?
Well, yeah, I guess so.
It's just a building block.
Simpler though, right?
No.
Like, it's not simpler than Patroni?
No.
Okay.
First of all, it's not based on consensus algorithm. Let me reveal what I observe.
Yeah, sure.
Kukushkin went to Microsoft. He was hired by Microsoft. Then CyTOS support appeared in Patroni, and less commits are happening in PG autofailover.
Okay, interesting.
And it's not based on consensus algorithm. So I'm afraid it falls into the same category as a rep manager, which I know how it feels to have split brain there. So I don't know. Maybe it's simpler in some sense, but what price do you pay for this simplicity? If you have hundreds of nodes, you will have split brains probably, right? I don't know. I never used it, so I just don't like if it's not based on consensus algorithm. So I suspect it will play. It will play bad game for me. I don't know. Like I'm okay with Patroni. So sorry. It's not simple. It's not very simple, but it's not hard at all. It's not super difficult, and it's well maintained.
Yeah,
but again, it's just one component. Yeah,
I think reading up on Patroni, I found it quite daunting. So I can imagine other people as well. Like at first, it being a bit of a learning curve, but also yeah.
But if you use PostgreSQL cluster, which I mentioned, it will install it for you with etcd, right? So you don't care about it. Like on all nodes, it's installed, it's configured properly, like with good defaults. Just go use it. Same as RDS, right? So
yeah, sure. I mean, it's still scary though, right? Like running things you don't understand.
Yes, RDS also has issues sometimes.
Yeah, true.
And
cool. Are those the two? Did you mention there might be there was a third one?
Third one is probably a new player, which was called CoreDB. And
Tembo.
I know they want Tembo. They renamed. I know they want to open source everything. So I would keep an eye on.
They don't have much yet, right? They don't have anything we could use today.
But I would keep an eye on this company as well. But probably they will release some good solution which you can use on your machines, even if it's not cloud. So
how do you know they won't go with Kubernetes or Kubernetes?
Oh, I don't know actually. Maybe it's Kubernetes, but maybe not. Actually, good question. I don't know. I just talking to them. I just know they share this philosophy that open source should have some new cycle of development, because we see many companies who already became quite popular. They move away from open source, sadly, and HashiCorp is just new example here. Before that, we had database companies like MongoDB and Elastic. They moved away, it's like Cloud Wars and so on. But I think this opens opportunities for open source to have better product level, not just features, but to feel like a product. Because some open source projects, they have this feeling. You have UI, you have just magic button that handles everything, and it's well maintained, so it happens. For example, Ubuntu, right? So we have Linux, good open source project, but Ubuntu is also open source, and it took a lot of time to achieve some level where usability is good, but it's already happening. Ubuntu is already not bad, right?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? Like the thing that seems to be driving it is business models, and historically the business model that worked around open source, well, the two big ones were support based, so you could make your business offering support for the system, or companies that it's not their main differentiator collaborated on building a system. So I think those two combined to make Postgres work, right? So companies that wanted this and needed this working together, and separately support companies built around supporting the system. So
That's
maybe
super interesting question. I agree. And I think I'm super curious how Supabase investors feeling because they open everything. They of course are champions in growing growing attention of meme style marketing. They're champions here, so people go to their Twitter and listen to them a lot. It's great. So probably they just are okay to open everything, but they know that they are able to drive traffic to their own SaaS, like PaaS, or how to say, as a service offering, where they can make money. But also anyone can run Supabase, it means, right?
Including Amazon.
Right, Supabase too. Like this I don't understand. Probably nobody understands. I don't know. Maybe this is a super interesting topic. Less about self-hosted and so on, but it's interesting. And also, I think, I would like to explore. I decided to open source everything as well. So we just released. We didn't announce, but it's already stamped. Database Lab Engine 3.4. But I planned to switch from AGPL to Apache 2.0 only in future version 4.0, who is still in alpha, soon will be in beta. So, but this morning we discussed with the team, and I decided that we will announce 3.4 Database Lab Engine, DB Lab Engine right now, and in a few days we will make 3.5 just to change license fully to Apache, and we will open source everything. I don't know if I fail in terms of business, but I like the openness and I like open source. And I know there are people who feel the same and would like to see new wave of open source rise. We know this concept like Cloud 8 open source, but I think things might change. Let's see.
I just remember we actually had a discussion about this on Postgres TV relatively recently. Exact conversation. So I'll link that up in the show notes as well.
Right. Who knows what will happen, but I have a feeling that right now it feels like open source is losing to clouds and companies move away from open source. But this might be just a sign that we will have a new wave of open source in the future. Because believers, like some people, I'm going to be believer in open source as well. I want to bet on open source fully. I think they will develop good UIs, good automation, everything. They will do just because they want, I want to live in the world where code as knowledge is shared freely. I think we deserve this world. Not like companies who hide everything. So code should be shared.
I have to disagree a bit, being a provider of a closed source tool. But I think there's something to be said for platforms that are open being very, 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 very valuable. And if we can collaborate on what's in the middle, what's the platform that's serving a lot of these things, everyone can build on top of that, whether that's open source, closed source, and people choose which components they want. I understand the purist thing, but I do think there's a separate argument here that's not inherently bad.
Let's discuss it another time.
Sure, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nikolay. Thanks, everyone, and catch you next week.
Thanks to our listeners. Don't forget to share with your colleagues and friends and who work with Postgres, and please provide some feedback and likes as well, especially on on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere you can see our podcast. Please support us. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.